So you can actually say that Norway inspired Elon Musk. So Elon Musk should actually thank Norway for the inspiration, right?
Yes.
Let's see if we ever get that. Thank you.
And I think it must be not the one that I sing the most perfect, but the one I think it's most fun, which is Queen, Don't Stop Me Now.
Okay, so I'm gonna play with you. I'm gonna push awesome because I think it's amazing initiative, and then I'm gonna push the bullshit button as well because I think that
we need technologies and businesses that enable us consumers to take more climate-friendly choices day by day, as I've alluded to already, right?
Awesome. Can I do that more clear? No, I don't think so. Welcome to The Switch, not just another podcast. The podcast where we entertain you and educate you in everything that has to do with the green transition that we need to do to get a balanced and resilient society that we can live and rejoice in. My name is Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and I am the naive optimist who is your host today. And I'm super excited to be here today with you. And of course, with me, I have my amazing team behind the scenes over there.
Hello.
How are you guys?
I'm good. I'm excited for today's episode.
Oh, me too. Yeah. Jacob, you?
Yes.
Game on?
Really excited. A little more.
Game on. Good. Today's episode, of course, we have an exciting guest. I'm soon gonna introduce that person to you. But before that, remember, we have our awesome button, the thing we use when we think that something is utterly amazing. Awesome. And then we have our little bullshit button. And when do we press that? When we think that things need to change, because that's one of the reasons we are here. There are so many good things happening out there and we need to make sure to elevate the things that is working, but also dare to talk about the things that is not working so we can get to it, right? So now it's time for the introduction of today's guest. Guro Skjæveland is an investment manager in Nysnø Climate Invest. She joined the team in 2020 and is involved in both direct and fund investments. She has experience from the energy sector as a consultant in Rystad Energy and Proactima. Guro holds a Master of Science in Industrial Economics and Technology Management from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. Oh, wow, that's a long name for a university, but a really cool university to be at, I can promise you that. Her growing interest in climate convinced her to use her expertise to achieve lasting positive change with investment capital as a tool in Nysnø. She's also a foodie that uses her interest to make the world a little bit better. I hope you are as eager as I am to find out more about Guro and Nysnø. Welcome to the show, Guro.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Kristina.
Yeah. Listen, Guro, let's dive into this because we say Guro now and it's like the English version, but I like the sound when you say it in Norwegian. Can you say your name in Norwegian?
Yeah, so on the Stavanger dialect, where I'm from, it's Guro. But people in Oslo say Guro, yeah. Guro.
It's a very beautiful name and I love the way you like Guro. I think that says a lot about the Norwegian people. I've actually yet to discover how it actually sounds when Norwegian people argue with each other, but it must sound very amusing and fun because you have such a nice and happy dialect in everything you do.
Yeah. I've heard that we kind of are singing when we speak. So I think it's a nice language.
Yeah. Actually, the same applies for us Swedes. They tend to say the same thing. We're singing as we are speaking, right? I think that sounds great. Amusing in a sense. Listen, that's not what we're here to talk about. We are talking. We want to talk more about Nysnø and, of course, of you. And but I just wanted to say we read that your growing interest in climate convinced you to use your expertise to achieve lasting positive change with investment capital as a tool in Nysnø. But can you even allow yourself today to not be interested in the climate? What's your thought about that?
Yeah, the short answer is no. Climate change is, as you know, the most pressing challenge that's facing humanity now, and it encompasses and affects all living creatures, right? Yes, we need large systemic changes in our energy system and food system, but at the same time, every single one of us, you and I, we can make a change as well with our everyday choices and our everyday consumption patterns, because it's actually us people that has led us to this climate change we're facing, right?
Yeah.
So how can we then become more sustainable human beings? And I think a good analogy is nutrition facts, right? Over the past decades, there's been enormous information campaigns where we've become more educated on calories, fats, proteins, sugar, etc. So we're now kind of enabled or empowered to make healthy dietary choices. Yeah. And we should actually relate to carbon in the same fashion, right? What are the related carbon emissions to everything we buy and eat? And only then we can make fact-based and climate-friendly choices.
Oh, I agree with that. And I know that Nysn has actually a theory of how to do this and how to invest moving forward. And we're going to dive into that. But before that, I am actually curious to get to know you, the foodie behind the company here. So are you ready for the wheel of questions?
Yes.
Let's spin the wheel.
Wheel of questions. What would you sing at karaoke nights?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love karaoke actually, and we actually frequently do it with our colleagues.
Really?
So that's fun. We have had some karaoke nights, and I think it must be not the one that I sing the most perfect, but the one I think is most fun, which is Queen. Don't Stop Me Now.
Oh, I mean, you are going on a higher level. I was like, if I would pick someone, I would do like an easy one, but you're actually going high maintenance there.
Yeah.
Cool. Impressed, definitely. Let's see what the next question is.
Wheel of questions. Who is your hero and what is your proudest accomplishment?
I think my hero is not just one, but actually all the founders within climate technology. I really admire them, how they kind of busting their asses off trying to solve this crisis. I don't know if I would have the confidence to do that. And
any favorites?
It's hard to pick one. It's especially, I mean, all the founders in our portfolio, I really admire every single one of them. So I don't want to favorize, but so it's a group of heroes, I'd say. And to the other question, what's my biggest accomplishment? I mean, of course, I'm really proud of being in Nysn. It really matters a lot to me, but something more personal might be when I reached the summit of Kilimanjaro back in 2014. That was a proud moment. And I didn't do the usual route where you sleep in comfortable huts. It was a more hardcore route. So I'm proud of that. And now I see that it's 8 years ago. So it's probably time to do something new now soon.
Oh, wow. Well, now you really impressed me. Was it difficult?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard on the last part when we were summiting. It was hard to breathe, and we went really slowly, but it was such a great experience.
Was there some realizations? Was there some epiphany moments when you were climbing up there, like, this is going to change my life in this direction?
I don't know why I was climbing. I was mostly thinking, okay, slowly, breathe. But I think afterwards I was really proud and kind of that made me think that, okay, I can do, if I want something or have a mission or a goal, then I can actually reach it.
I think that's a very good takeaway. And I think that's a strategy for life, right? You can do whatever you want if you just go slowly, step by step. Yes. Really cool, Guro. And as I said, it might be a way of tackling the actual climate situation as we have now. Let's dive into that. I'm very curious because you're now in an investment company, right? How does your experience from the energy sector help you where you are today?
Well, I learned so much about the energy system when I was a management consultant within the energy space. And I really kind of acknowledged how complex the energy system is, and especially related to renewable energy and kind of the intermittency problems related to that. You can't bunk up solar or wind power in the same way you can do with oil or liquefy gas into LNG. So yeah, it really made me think that, or acknowledge that we have a challenging task going forward. Now that we're going to electrify everything, and that is going to come from renewable energy sources.
And how come did you end up in Nysnø? What attracted you to them?
Some people say they have this kind of one epiphany moment when they realize that, oh, wow, climate change is real and we need to do something. I didn't have this like one specific moment. I had more a gradual kind of awakening to the fact that all of my long hours as a consultant and late nights really went to kind of helping oil and gas companies earn more money, basically. And I realized that, wow, this is not aligned with my personal interests and values. So I wanted to do something that meant something more. And Nysnø was there, and there was an opportunity there that I embarked on. And yeah, I'm very happy to have been here now for 2 years.
Can you tell me, if you would like do the 1 minute pitch on Nysnø for anyone who doesn't know Nysnø, what would you say? What is it, and where did it come from?
Yes, so Nysnø Climate Investments is a 100% Norwegian state-owned investment company focusing on climate technologies. So we have a goal of contributing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And we invest both directly into early stage companies that are transitioning from technology development to commercialization, but also we invest in other funds that also invest in early stage companies. So we are a direct investor and fund investor.
You said it's 100% owned by the state. Is
Yes.
that something that is unique?
Well, we're seeing more and more initiatives as Nysnø popping up. But we were established back in 2017 as a response to the Paris Agreement. And it was the Paris Agreement Point 2 or Article 2 Part 3, which is not that known as the 1.5 degree goal. It states that we should make capital flows consistent with a pathway towards low greenhouse gas emissions and climate resilient development. And to our knowledge, we are one of the first state-owned climate-focused investment companies in the world, actually. You have, of course, in Denmark, you have Vækstfonden. In Sweden, you have Almi Invest that has been there for a long time and doing kind of venture investments. But we were the first kind of niche climate-focused fund. So, yeah, I think it's quite unique. But we're, of course, seeing a lot of new initiatives now, which is great.
Yeah, I think that, again, Norway is inspiring other countries. And I think that's why I'm pretty excited about Nysnø in that sense. Because if you look back at the history of Norway, you've always been very early in thinking climate solutions. We will talk a little bit later, a little bit about electric vehicles and such. But I think that it's pretty cool, this Nysnø and the initiative and how it's actually spreading now.
Yeah.
You must be proud working there.
I am.
Yeah. Guro, you and I met at the Clean Tech Capital Days in Oslo, and you were sitting in a panel discussing what we need from investors and innovators. What did you take away from that panel?
Yeah, so one of my key takeaways there was that we have to ensure that capital flows to the technologies and projects that have the largest emission reduction potential.
What does that mean, that they should flow?
I mean, we should invest and back technologies that actually makes a difference, that actually has a big potential to reduce emissions. And there's this newsletter called Climate Tech VC. VC stands for venture capital, that has tracked where early stage investments or investors have been pouring their money over the last 2 years. And they see that there's been invested 80 times more money into e-mobility subsectors than ecosystem restoration. Now, firstly, the electric mobility subsectors are cost competitive today. And venture capital, which backs early stage early stage companies should, by definition, support technologies that need to come down the cost curve. There are other asset classes or other type of investors that can back commercial ready companies. Secondly, these subsectors have less than half the climate change mitigation potential than ecosystem restoration, which actually has the same potential impact-wise as deploying wind or solar at scale, according to IPCC's last report. So basically there's a mismatch between where climate early stage investments have been have been made relative to where the emission impact and commerciality lies.
So actually we have a change that needs to be done. We need to change where we invest money from where they were invested to new sectors moving ahead. How will we solve this?
Yeah, so a bit like, as I alluded to earlier, right? To make a change, you need to have knowledge. You need to, what I said about the nutrition facts and understand carbon. And the same way, we have to start measuring climate impact the same way that investors are measuring financial return. And how can we do this? Well, we believe that we can quantify the emission reduction potential of technologies. And that's why in Nysnø Climate Investments, we're heading up a global initiative called Project Frame, together with Prime Coalition, Energy Impact Partners, which is also an investor, BCG, OCGI, and others. And we're basically building a science-based framework for climate investors to assess the impact that the innovations they back today will have on future emissions. So we're very optimistic, and we have a big goal of kind of creating a universal standardized way of calculating this, so that we are comparing apples to apples, like similar to accounting principles and methods for calculating financial returns.
Okay, so I'm going to play with you. I'm going to push awesome because I think it's amazing initiative. And then I'm going to push the bullshit button as well, because I think that isn't this a knowledge investors should have and make, I mean, isn't this an understanding? You should be interested enough and making sure that you put your money where it actually makes a difference. Whose responsibility is it? You're building a framework.
Yeah, I agree, and you should think that. But as I mentioned, right, we have been investing where the impact isn't biggest. So evident. I mean, we have evidence on now that the investors aren't quite smart always. Whose responsibility?
I won't quote you on that one. It's a spiky statement, but I think it's true, and I think it's a fact that we also need to realize, right? I mean, I think that you're spot on here, because we are not smarter than the future, than the actual reality we're living in. It's difficult to foresee the future. And what I'm hearing from you here now is that we really need to push forward and understand and ask the questions about the future. Super cool.
And also the kind of the importance in that we do it in the same way, because if someone calculates their portfolio or potential emission reductions in one way and someone else does it in another way, they might have a 10 times higher impact than another. But the reason is there's different assumptions lying behind. So it's really important that we get some kind of collective understanding on how to do this in the best manner.
Super interesting. What kind of clean technologies are you finding most interesting right now?
Well, I like to think of the solutions to the climate change from two angles. We need both top-down solutions, which means basically technologies and companies that address the larger systemic changes, such as technology within wind, solar, batteries, hydrogen, and so forth. But at the same time, we need these bottom-up solutions. And we need technologies and businesses that enable us consumers to take more climate-friendly choices day by day, as I've alluded to already, right? So keywords here include circular economy and awareness. So
circular, what did you say? Circular economy and
circular and awareness. Circular economy and awareness are key keywords here. And Nysnø, we have invested in Theis, for instance, which is a leading Nordic second-hand marketplace. And we've also invested in Ducky, which is a carbon accounting and awareness platform that kind of you can see it in your bank app and see how much kind of carbon emissions are related to your consumption. So we're looking a lot on these bottom-up solutions, and that's kind of one way of looking at it. And we're also both technology agnostic and sector agnostic. We invest across all sectors because there is a mission across all sectors that we need to address. And with technology agnostic, I mean that we both invest in software companies and hardware companies. And when we started investing back in 2018, we did a lot of software investments, which is typical venture capital investments. There's a lot of kind of upside with these scalable business models. But we are in Nysnø doing more and more also this heavy duty hardware stuff, because we see that that's where a lot of the impact will come from. So for instance, we quite recently invested in Morrow Batteries, which is a giga battery plant that's going to be built in Arendal in Norway. And we've also invested in Heaton, who's developing a really high temperature heat pump that will enable decarbonizing carbon intensive heating in industry.
That's cool. I like the perspective of top down and bottom up, so that it comes from two where. And actually, it's the first time I hear that you're investing in things that create awareness around this. Is that a strategy?
Yeah, it was kind of one of our investment theses that resulted in our investment in Ducky. So we really believe that we have to spread awareness among the consumers. It's so crucial.
Norway has a reputation as an environmental nation. What made this advantage in a greener future possible?
Well, first of all, we have been extremely lucky in the natural resources given to us as a country. We have a lot of weather, including a lot of rain, and which on a personal level is quite frustrating, but from a business point of view, fantastic. Because we've actually had clean energy from hydropower since 1891. And amazing. Clean energy, it is truly amazing. And clean energy is a crucial input factor in the green future, for instance, in battery production and green hydrogen production. On top of that, we have our very long coastline, which gave us an initial wealth from the sardine and canning industry. But the real wealth has, of course, come from the oil and gas adventure. And here is a crucial aspect, which is key in succeeding when building new green industries going forward. The natural resources and wealth must be managed democratic, transparent, and just.
Wow.
And to take, awesome, thank you. And to take an example, looking back at history, the first 2 years after the Ekofisk oil field was discovered in 1969, the exploration on the Norwegian continental shelf was mostly dominated by foreign companies. Luckily, the Norwegian state intervened after these 2 years, and they incorporated Statoil, now Equinor, which is a state oil company. And they also kind of put out different frameworks, and they also established that the state should participate in production licenses and so forth. The setup has, of course, evolved over time. Equinor is now listed, and they have a bit smaller ownership stake. The point is, had we continued with the initial trend the first 2 years, things would have looked completely different. The way the Norwegian government kind of navigated from the start gave us the oil fund, one of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, and it gave us the welfare state.
When you say gave us, you mean you gave it back to the actual Norwegian people?
Yes, they ensured that the wealth that we were able to extract from our natural resources came back to the people. And with a welfare state, there comes free education. So we are a highly educated country. We have a lot of industry competence, especially from oil and gas, but also from marine and process industries, which are also big in Norway. So we're going to build the new green industrial value chains on the shoulders of these industries and utilize the competence that sits within our population.
I think it's an important point what you're taking here now. We need to incorporate all the different assets we have, even if So many people talk about oil and gas being like bad money and green being good money. But I think that Norway is a great example where you incorporate it in order to make sure that we have a better and resilient future moving ahead.
Yes, I agree. And also I want to add to what I just said, that what's also interesting with our history with the oil and gas industry is that our little country, tucked up in the corner of the world, became a global superpower basically in the oil and gas industry. As I mentioned, we had a democratic state, which was truly important, but we've also had good international business relations, enabling us to export, becoming an exporting nation. And we have to emulate this in the green future. New technologies and companies are limited by our tiny home market. So we have to get access, or the Norwegian newcomers have to get access to international markets in order to succeed. And one of the ingredients are capital bridges between Norwegian and international climate capital. And Nysnø is an actor trying to establish these international these capital bridges. We try to kind of attract international investors to Norway so that we make shortcuts for our companies from our small home market to the bigger markets.
Can you give a good example of a company that has succeeded because of that?
Yeah, so we have, for instance, invested in a Canadian fund called Arthur Ventures. They, after we came in as an investor, they established themselves or established an office in Norway, in Oslo, and kind of really now focusing on the Norwegian ecosystem. Another concrete example is that we have co-invested with AP Ventures, which is a British or a UK-based fund focusing on the hydrogen economy. We've co-invested with them in a Norwegian company called Seg Power, and which is a hydrogen company, and they are now kind of really getting a name out in the global market because of this international investor.
I know that that was actually a theme we talked about during Clean Tech Capital Days, that we need to have the Scandinavian countries in a whole, with all the innovation and everything that sits here, needs to be taken out internationally if we are going to make a difference. So I think that this is a good example of how we can do it and how the collaboration is very important there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, what you're telling us about Norway here, when you're talking about Norway, it feels like you have it all set up, and people look at you as a very brave nation. One example is that you were first in electric vehicles. Are you still a brave nation?
Yes. First of all, I agree. We have had a tremendous EV journey, not only for Norway, but also for the world. We kind of proved to be a testbed for the EV development, and we have created a great market through our substantial incentive packages. So we were not surprised when Elon Musk came here to Norway recently during ONS, a big energy conference in Stavanger. So that was cool. And I'd say we're still brave.
Yeah. Just
kind of the fact that the state established Nysnø in 2017 as a response to the Paris Agreement, I think is brave. And we can just dream how it would have been if Nysnø was established back in the days. We could have invested in a Norwegian Tesla, because many don't know that actually the Norwegian car Think was one of the first world's first EVs in early 2000s. They went bankrupt, unfortunately, but yeah. So it's a nice thought experience how it would have been if it was established even before.
So you can actually say that Norway inspired Elon Musk. So Elon Musk should actually thank Norway for the inspiration, right?
Yes.
Let's see if we ever get that. Thank you.
But also just to conclude, I mean, we are definitely a brave nation. Just before the COP in Egypt now, the government increased our climate goals. So now we're going to reduce emissions by 55% by 2030 compared to 1990. And this was 50% before the COP. So they're really vocal about the plans. They are pushing forward roadmaps and strategies on establishing these new green value chains, among others, offshore wind, batteries, and hydrogen. And I think they can be brave because they have such kind of faith and trust in the population, because we've seen how we've succeeded with the oil and gas industry, we know that we trust the government that we will succeed also with the green future.
I will push the awesome button for that. And I think that you basically answered my last question here. What can other countries learn from Norway, right? Dare to be brave and put a lot of trust in the population, because that is actually what can make a difference in a sense.
And kind of having a democratic, transparent and just management of wealth and natural resources is key to getting this trust.
Awesome. Can I do that more clear? No, I don't think so. I'm super excited to hear that, and it's inspiring, Guro. It's inspiring. It's time for the question from our future.
Questions from our future.
Who should pay for the better world?
Who should pay for a better world? Well, that's a tough one. I think it's a good principle that the ones that have contributed the most to emissions should pay the bill, or at least the largest part of the bill. So basically, it's the developed countries in the global north that should be most accountable. And if we look to Norway again, as an example, we contribute about 50 gigatons of CO2 emissions annually. And if we kind of list all countries in the world, from the largest emitters to the smallest emitters, we are number 60. So in relative terms, not that big. But this is basically our scope 1 emissions, or the emissions that come from our own activities within our borders. And we have contributed to scope 1 emissions of other countries through our oil and gas exports.
Yeah.
So we're not taking this into account. And us and other developed countries, we have to step up and be accountable for having used the atmosphere as basically a free CO2 trash can for years now.
I couldn't agree more with you, but yet they can't even agree to put the word fossil fuels when they agree about what needs to be done, and even less than who should do it. How do we move forward in this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because it is a dilemma, right? We have the energy crisis at the same time that we have a climate crisis, and it's super hard to solve. And I think we can solve it without fossil fuels, probably a bit naive, but I think there are ways to do this, but things are going too slow. And first of all, kind of it's understandable because it takes time to deploy new technology. It takes a lot of capital. And a good reference is the wind power sector. It has taken over 3 decades to arrive where we are today in terms of commerciality. And there's, of course, several reasons to this, right? You need to kind of mitigate technology risks. You need to come down the cost curve. You need to create a market and so forth. But regulations is also a crucial element. And so going forward, I kind of hope that policymakers and regulators can make these consenting processes and so forth more lean and pragmatic. Just an example on wind, our government thinks that expects that offshore wind will be in operations by 2030 in Norway. And that's 8 years from now. And that's what it typically takes for an oil field to be built from a licensing round to start a production of an oil field. And with wind, you don't have the exploration phase as you do with oil and gas and the risks attached to it. So there's no logic reason in my mind why it should take so long time. But yeah, maybe.
I like that. After having all these discussions with so many intelligent people on this podcast, I still did not get the answer why it's taking so long. So I think that question is a super important one to actually have. It's kind of an uncomfortable conversation to have in the future. Moving in to the next segment, uncomfortable conversations.
Uncomfortable conversations.
Are we too slow?
Well, yes, as I alluded to earlier, there are of course things that can be done on the regulation side and kind of, making it possible to deploy new technology quicker. But more importantly, we haven't yet decoupled economic growth from fossil fuels and a linear economy. And this really emphasizes the need for these bottom-up solutions I've already talked about. We need technologies and business models that can help us consumers reduce our carbon footprints. If not, everything we achieve now in terms of lowering emissions will basically be eaten up by our increased consumption as our population grows.
So can you give an example of this? Because it's so important. This is the awareness we're talking about again, right?
Yeah, so an example of that is actually the Christmas holidays we've just been through. So we really have to, or I hope people reflected upon what they bought before Christmas, because our children and ourselves, basically, we have to decouple the deeply embedded notion of joy from the number of presents we get on Christmas Eve and the kilos of plastic we unwrap. So yeah, that's an example where we really can think.
Yeah, I really think that we've had that as a theme, I think, throughout this show, that everyone who's been here who is aware, we're talking about quality instead of quantity, making sure that we make aware decisions on what we actually need and to buy things that can actually last for a long time. And that is a part of the ecosystem. And I think that you're onto something here, and who should make sure and take the responsibility that we create these ecosystems, that we educate people that they need to buy things in a different way, consume in a different way?
Yeah, I think the responsibility lies among a lot of stakeholders. I mean, of course, the governments of the world, the regulators should, of course, have a voice, but also entrepreneurs, investors, and citizens. But what I think is really interesting is how I more and more experience that the young people, you know, the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha, I think, is the next generation. They are more woke and more willing to get educated than older folks when it comes to the impact we have on the planet. So I think also that influencers that are targeting young people should be role models and advocate the need for less consumption and belongings. And they should definitely do it in an optimistic and hopeful manner, because we don't need pessimism for the young people. And they need to kind of explain that basically we need to start buying access rather than ownership.
Here. I think that you are on to something that is the solution to take us from where we are today and to move us into the future. I'm so proud that you've been on this show, and I feel that I'm so inspired by not only you, but also from Norway and Nysn and how we're thinking. It's a democratic question that we need to think of in a different way. It's time now to hear what Guro has as a sunshine to someone else. An initiative, a person, or maybe just something that she wants us all to think about even more.
I want to give the sunshine to the young people that I've already talked about. I want to fill them with hope and encourage them that we actually we can solve this problem. We can have a sustainable future, because there's been a lot of pessimism now around climate change. So yeah, I want to spread sunshine to these young people and the future generations.
And you most certainly have done that. I think that anyone who is going to listen to this episode is going to be filled with a lot of optimism, because you came with a couple of really good suggestions how we can make sure to move ahead. So thank you, Guro, for being on the show and to making sure to spread that awareness and inspiration to all our listeners out there.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
If you liked the show, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on the YouTube channel, but also on the podcast platform that you are on. Also, the best way of spreading awareness is actually to send it to someone you like. So if you think that this was a good one, send this episode to someone that you think should have a great inspirational 30 minutes together with us. On that note, thank you for today. I hope that you will have a good time until we meet next time. Take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else. See ya!